several people in the Trump administration are now openly saying that the rationale that they have been using to strip visas from green card holders and student visa holders, particularly the student visa holders in universities, this rationale of you are anti-Semitic because you are criticizing Israel's attacks on Gaza, that they now want to redirect that toward U.S. citizens who are critical of Israel or who are critical of Trump, and claim that those of us who are critical of this administration or of Netanyahu's administration are enabling terrorism, which under the Patriot Act makes us guilty of terrorism, which then Trump says makes us eligible for deportation to El Salvador. I mean, it's pretty breathtaking. Keep in mind, the very first day of Trump's presidency, January 20th, he signed a whole bunch of executive orders, and one of those executive orders was, pretty startling. This executive order was titled "Protecting." Hang on just a second. I'm trying to find the exact title of it. But it was basically what he said was, here it is. It was titled "Protecting the American People Against Invasion," and it requires all persons in the United States who are not citizens, including green card holders, it requires them to carry their citizenship identification at all times or be subject to arrest, including green card holders, everybody. So this is like moving really fast. This is how they do it. I mean, they do it first. They go after the immigrants, right? The first, literally, not literally. The very first people Hitler went after actually were trans people, which of course this administration has been going after for 10 years now. Then they go after immigrants. Then they go after the enemy within, and which they define however they happen to define it this day or this week, and that includes people like you and me, citizens of the United States who are critical of the Trump administration. And the Soviet Union, they had an internal passport system. By the way, the Real ID Act goes into effect in 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, I guess it is. I think it's the May 7th, or the first week of May. And, requiring Americans to have identification that shows their citizenship. In 1932, the Soviet Union introduced an internal passport system, very much like the Real ID Act. And what happened? Well, within 10 years, those passports, those domestic passports, were required for everyone over 16 to carry at all times. And without the proper stamps and approvals, you couldn't get a job, you couldn't get housing, you couldn't get education, you couldn't even get food rations. And during crackdowns like the 68 Prague Spring, those ID systems became weaponized, right? They allowed authorities to target, detain, and even disappear political opponents under the guise of administrative violations, excuse me. Another poignant example of this was the Green Ticket Roundup on May 14th, 1941 in Paris. The Vichy French government, the Nazi collaborating French government, sent out a green, they were printed on green paper, a notice that to 3,700 immigrants, saying that you need to check in. Now, they were all Jewish, but they were immigrants, not French citizens, saying that you need to check in with the government, the Vichy government, for a status check. And when these 3,700 people showed up, they were arrested and deported to death camps. It was the first mass arrest of Jews in France during World War II. So, here we are. In the United States, we're witnessing the early stages of this same playbook. And when Trump comes out and says, we can't give everyone a trial, I mean, this isn't a slip of the tongue. This is just a direct statement of naked authoritarianism. I mean, all over the country, we're seeing stories piling up about ICE arrests and detentions with no transparency, no due process, no answers. A mother from Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, detained by ICE, leaving her children and family in a panic. They have no idea where she is. She has no criminal record. No apparent reason for the arrest. The U.S. government detained a father at 2. The Center for Constitutional Rights is calling it an illegal detention, saying it was based on racial profiling. American citizens are getting swept up in these. So far, mostly they've been released, but ICE agents showed, they detained a Harvard affiliate in what critics are calling targeted enforcement. In Los Angeles, they showed up at a public school district and said they wanted to talk to the kids. I mean, what kind of country sends armed federal agents, not local police, not law enforcement, but basically, the military or a militarized branch of the federal government into school communities to drag away parents or students? What kind of country does that? A country that's sliding into fascism. Trump and his buddies claim that this is about law and order. But when you strip people of their rights based solely on their immigration status, and you create a culture where anyone who looks like they might be undocumented can be interrogated or detained without cause, you're not enforcing the law. You're weaponizing it. This isn't idle talk. I mean, they've laid out the blueprint for this. I read this Axios report this morning to Congressman Pocan, but it bears repeating. This is from Axios this morning. A solid, middle of the road, mainstream news organization in which the Trump administration is floating the idea of arresting American citizens who have criticized the Trump anti-terror policies, which they describe as the policies which they describe as support for Israel and the attack on Gaza, and deporting immigrants to the Sikhat concentration camp in El Salvador. Here's a quote. This is from Axios. Quote: Trump administration officials are suggesting their immigration crackdown could expand to include deporting convicted U.S. citizens and charging anyone, not just immigrants, who criticizes Trump's policies. Some officials say U.S. citizens who criticize administration policies could be charged with crimes based on the notion that by that criticism, they're aiding terrorists and criminals. White House Senior Director for Counterterrorism Seb Gorka said in an interview with Newsmax, quote, "You have to ask yourself, are they technically aiding and abetting them? Because aiding and abetting criminals and terrorists is a crime." And then the article goes on to say Trump's team has also questioned the legality of civic groups providing immigrants with Know Your Rights training on how to respond to federal agents. Borders czar Thom Hartmann suggested that such seminars help people evade law enforcement. And this is how it starts. I mean, soon it could be policy that anybody who criticizes the Trump regime ends up disappeared. This is the normalization of papers, please. I mean, those of us of a certain age remember those old movies, the old black and white movies and the old Twilight Zone episodes in the 50s and 60s and 70s on television when, that took place in Nazi Germany or took place in the Soviet Union or took place in a future dystopian America where the goose-stepping police come up to the average person on the street and say, "Papers, please." And if you don't produce them fast enough, boom, you're disappeared. That's what's happening here. We're moving in that direction rapidly. So what can we do about this? Number one, contact your representatives and demand oversight hearings on ICE enforcement. Number two, support legal aid organizations providing representation to detained immigrants. Three, document and report ICE activities in your community as civil liberty watchdogs. Four, show up for the weekly protests. Five, participate in social media and other venues to get the word out. And six, send small dollar donations, like $5, $25, to politicians who show the courage to speak out or take action against the regime. Every time they do it, it'll have more impact than a postcard or a phone call. But remember, what happens to the most vulnerable among us eventually happens to us all.